I speak to you, as if my breath were trained in silk and ceremony, yet my heart forgets all protocol, when it leans toward your name. In the quiet chambers of my thoughts, I rehearse courage the way others rehearse vows. Because loving you feels like stepping onto a balcony, where the night listens back. Every word I choose trembles with intention, as though it knows it will be remembered longer than a crown's reflection. I carry my affection with the discipline of a princess, measured and luminous, but beneath that composure lives a restless tide that rises whenever I imagine your nearness. I wonder if you can hear the echo of my pulse across the distance, how it beats not for power or legacy, but for the singular gravity of you. Suspense curls inside me like a held breath before a declaration that could change the weather of our lives. There are moments when I feel my voice learning a new language shaped entirely by your presence, vowels softened by longing, consonants sharpened by resolve. I want to tell you how the future bends when I think of your hands, how time itself grows attentive, pausing as if it too wishes to listen. Loving you is an education no academy could offer, a curriculum written by desire and patience. I imagine meeting your gaze and discovering that all the stories written about me dissolve into something simpler and truer. In that instant, I would be only a woman choosing a man, not for destiny's demand, but for the quiet insistence of my soul. The suspense of that imagined moment keeps me awake, tender and alert, like dawn waiting to be allowed in. My heart has learned restraint, but with you it practices honesty, daring to reveal its softer architectures. I want you to know how carefully I hold this feeling, polishing it with thought, guarding it from fear, letting it grow luminous without letting it rush. Romance, to me, is not haste but depth, and you invite me into depths I did not know I could survive so sweetly. Sometimes I fear the magnitude of what I feel, the way it stretches beyond etiquette and expectation. But then I remember that even royalty is human at its core. I remember that love has always been the most radical inheritance. With you I sense a revolution that wears no armor, only devotion. I picture your name resting in my mouth like a promise I am not yet allowed to speak aloud. The suspense of silence becomes its own intimacy, a secret corridor where my thoughts walk barefoot. Each step toward you is deliberate, reverent, alive with the knowledge that some distances are meant to be crossed slowly. There is a romance in waiting, in allowing desire to mature like a careful harvest. I wait not because I doubt, but because I honor what is forming between us. My affection for you is patient, but it is not passive. It watches, it hopes, it prepares itself to be brave. If I were to write you into my future, I would do so in ink that deepens with time, not fading but learning new shades. I would choose you not as an escape from duty, but as its most honest companion. You would stand beside me not in shadow, but in shared light. I confess that my dreams have begun to arrange themselves around your silhouette. Even in sleep, there is a tension, a sweet uncertainty, as though my heart is asking permission to leap. I wake with the echo of that question, still warm in my chest. I want to tell you how my thoughts soften when they arrive at you, how even my doubts grow gentler. You make me believe that strength can be tender, that authority can kneel, that love can be both fierce and kind. In you, I sense a harmony that steadies my restless royal blood. Every glance imagined between us carries a promise and a risk, and that is what makes it exquisite. Suspense is the proof that something precious is at stake. I treasure that feeling, the way one treasures a sealed letter, knowing its contents will alter the heart. I have learned to stand tall before crowds, but before you I would gladly learn how to lean, not in weakness, but in trust, allowing my guarded heart to rest against yours. That possibility glows within me like a candle protected from wind. There is a romance in how you remain just beyond reach, close enough to feel, distant enough to desire. It teaches me reverence, teaches me to listen to what is not yet spoken. In that listening, my love grows articulate without saying a word. I imagine a future conversation where our truths finally meet, and the air between us changes. Until then, I hold my feelings with a grace learned from centuries, yet animated by a longing entirely my own. This is how a princess loves when she loves deeply. You awaken in me a courage that is quiet but unyielding. It does not demand, it invites. It waits for the moment when your heart recognizes its reflection in mine. If destiny were a corridor, I would walk it steadily, carrying your name like a lantern. Each step would be deliberate, lit by hope, guided by the certainty that love chosen freely is the most sovereign act. With you, I would choose again and again. I do not know when our paths will fully converge, but I feel the pull as surely as the moon commands the tide. That pull is gentle, persistent, impossible to ignore. It reminds me that some bonds are written before they are spoken. Until the moment arrives, I remain poised between restraint and yearning, a princess learning how to love without armor. My heart stands ready, luminous and patient, waiting for you to step into its open gate. There is no rush in what I feel, only depth, only promise. Suspense becomes a sacred space where romance breathes slowly. In that space, my dearest man, my love for you continues to grow unafraid, unmistakable and true. I often imagine the way your presence would transform a quiet room, not through grandeur or ceremony, but by simply existing there. The air would lean toward you, thick with anticipation, and even the walls would seem to listen. That thought alone makes my pulse quicken, as though they too understand the gravity of what we might share. There is a trembling in me when I picture your hand brushing against mine by accident, or perhaps by design, and I feel a secret thrill at the possibility. The suspense of that fleeting contact lingers in my chest, a whisper of intimacy that no crown or audience could ever rival. It is both exhilarating and terrifying. I wonder if you know how deeply I observe you in my thoughts, tracing every detail as if engraving it onto my memory. Your laugh, the subtle way you tilt your head when curious, the strength in your quiet moments, they all become chapters of a story I am writing in my heart, one that only you will ever read. Sometimes I feel that the world itself conspires to keep us apart for a moment longer, and yet, in that very restraint, my admiration for you grows. The suspense sharpens every feeling, every stolen imagination of you. I find joy in the waiting, in the yearning, as if distance is the secret ingredient that heightens love's intensity. I hold a vision of you as though cradling sunlight, too bright to touch directly, yet impossible to ignore. My emotions orbit you like a carefully choreographed dance, each beat a step closer, each pause a question we have not yet dared to answer aloud. Even in the quietest moments, when I am surrounded by obligations, my thoughts escape to you. I imagine the conversation we will someday have, the way our words will bend around each other, creating a private language that only our hearts can speak. That idea alone keeps me awake and achingly alive. I sometimes catch myself speaking your name softly, as if saying it aloud could summon you closer. The sound trembles like a secret spell, reverberating in my own ears, and making me wonder whether destiny itself might respond to such devotion. My heart often leaps at the thought of your smile, imagining the warmth it carries, the subtle power it has to alter the course of my day. Even imagining it sparks a magnetic pull inside me, a tension that is thrilling precisely because it is so delicate and unknown. There is an almost unbearable sweetness in the uncertainty of when we might finally be together. I savor the suspense, like a slow melody that holds its last note just long enough to make the eventual resolution breathtaking. Each imagined glance, each potential touch, becomes a jewel I polish with anticipation. I imagine what it would be like to walk beside you in silence, discovering the unspoken comfort that true intimacy brings. Even without words, I feel that connection, a magnetic thread weaving our hearts into a rhythm that no crown could dictate. When I close my eyes, I see your silhouette against the fading light of a royal garden, and I feel a pull toward you, so strong it frightens me with its force. It is not impatience, but an irresistible gravity that insists we are meant to meet, to recognize each other in ways no protocol could predict. There is a delicate ache in loving someone whose nearness I cannot yet claim fully, and yet that ache itself is exquisite. It is a kind of poetry written not on paper, but in the secret chambers of my heart, and it is reserved for you alone. I imagine the first time our hands truly intertwine, when no one is watching, when all the ceremony falls away. The suspense of that moment makes my breath catch, for it will be a declaration more powerful than any decree or crown. It will be the truth of our hearts revealed in a single, trembling touch. Your presence in my imagination feels both tangible and impossible, like a flame I can almost reach, but must admire from a careful distance. That tension sharpens every longing, making even a fleeting thought of you intoxicating. Sometimes I wonder if you feel the same magnetic pull I do, whether my heart's quiet insistence echoes in your own. The uncertainty is both cruel and delicious, a reminder that love is not only what is certain, but also what is beautifully suspended between moments yet to come. I dream of sharing small intimacies with you, a whispered confidence, a glance that holds the weight of unspoken understanding. These imagined moments thrill me more than any public celebration ever could, for they belong entirely to us, untouched by expectation or eyes that watch. There is a courage that love demands, the kind I feel growing in me whenever I think of you. It is not the courage to rule or command, but the courage to surrender a piece of my heart without losing my sovereignty. Loving you teaches me that bravery can be gentle, that desire can be disciplined, yet uncontainable. I imagine your eyes meeting mine across a crowded hall, and the world recedes until there is nothing but that single connection. The suspense in that imagined instant leaves me breathless, as if even the air conspires to hold its own anticipation for our meeting. Every thought of you feels like a secret revelation, a jewel hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to shine. The knowledge that we have not yet fully spoken our hearts only makes these private treasures more precious, more luminous with longing. There is a subtle, almost sacred tension in imagining our first real conversation, where our words meet and mingle, cautious yet electric. I long to hear your voice navigate my thoughts, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, turning restraint into rhythm and desire into a language of its own. Even in the strictest formality of courtly life, I feel my attention drawn inexorably toward you. It is as if an invisible current bends the ordinary toward you, highlighting the extraordinary nature of this bond forming between us. The suspense of waiting, the sweet uncertainty, becomes its own kind of celebration. I dream of the quiet rebellion of choosing you amidst all expectation, of allowing our hearts to speak freely, even when the world whispers otherwise. The suspense of that imagined decision fills me with a trembling thrill, for it promises a love that is both sovereign and undaunted. I sense that even a fleeting moment with you would change the rhythm of my life. The anticipation alone, knowing that one day we may share a space, a look, a word, is both intoxicating and grounding, as though all the stars have aligned just to whisper your name. There is a sacred tension in the distance between us, one that sharpens every heartbeat and heightens every imagined touch. Even the mere thought of your nearness stirs a symphony of emotions within me, a melody that waits only for your presence to reach its crescendo. I find myself rehearsing the ways I will finally tell you what has been quietly growing in me, each imagined confession delicate and deliberate, like a jewel placed in a setting that will make it shine. I want my words to reach you not just as a declaration, but as a revelation of everything I have held for you. The thought of being with you is both a promise and a puzzle, a riddle of anticipation that I delight in solving moment by moment in my heart. Every imagined touch, glance, and whispered word becomes part of a tapestry too intricate to be hurried, too precious to be trivialized. I sometimes imagine the world pausing, as if in reverence, when we finally stand together. The suspense of waiting has trained my heart to recognize the extraordinary in every ordinary thought of you, making even a mere anticipation feel like a sacred privilege. There are nights when I imagine your hand reaching for mine, tentative and searching, and the thought makes my heart beat a rhythm I cannot command. Each imagined touch feels like a promise yet unspoken, a secret waiting to bloom in its own time. I sometimes wonder how it will feel to finally speak your name aloud in the presence of no one but you, to let the syllables fall freely, without restraint. The anticipation of that moment is almost unbearable, a delicious suspense that makes the quiet of my room feel electric. Your presence haunts my dreams in the most delightful way, appearing just beyond reach, leaving me both frustrated and enchanted. Even in imagination, you inspire a longing that is patient and tender, tempered by the knowledge that what is worth having is worth waiting for. There is a delicate danger in imagining our closeness, the way my pulse catches when I picture you looking at me with quiet recognition, as if you already know the weight of my heart. That danger is exhilarating, a thrill that reminds me love is never without suspense. I hold your thought carefully, like a fragile crystal, in the deepest part of my consciousness. It is safe there, cherished and luminous, waiting for the moment when it can be shared openly, when the world will witness the quiet intensity that binds us. Sometimes, I feel that even the smallest gesture from you, an unguarded glance, a gentle smile, could transform the very fabric of my day. That thought alone keeps me alert, attuned to every movement in your presence, however fleeting or imagined. I imagine the first time our eyes truly meet, beyond ceremony, beyond obligation, and the world falls silent around us. The suspense of that first recognition leaves me trembling with anticipation, for it promises a connection that words could never fully capture. There is a kind of reverence in loving someone whose presence is both intoxicating and distant. It teaches patience, discipline, and a longing so exquisite it becomes almost sacred. Every imagined encounter with you feels like a treasure I am slowly uncovering. I often imagine speaking to you in quiet moments, sharing thoughts no one else could understand, creating a sanctuary in our conversation. The suspense lies not in fear, but in the exquisite uncertainty of how you might receive the depth of my heart. Even the anticipation of your nearness makes my senses heighten, the imagined warmth of your hand, the sound of your laughter, echoing gently in a quiet hall, the subtleties of your voice carrying across distance. Every detail becomes a note in a melody that only my heart can hear. I imagine the courage it will take to finally admit how completely you inhabit my thoughts, and yet I feel ready. The suspense of confessing such devotion is both terrifying and thrilling, for it is a moment of vulnerability that promises the deepest intimacy. Sometimes I picture you as a secret light in my day, the spark that brightens the ordinary, transforming routine into anticipation. Loving you has become an art of noticing, of holding the smallest imagined details, and letting them grow into a tapestry of longing. There is an almost unbearable sweetness in the waiting, in the knowledge that our union is not yet fully realized. Every imagined moment of closeness becomes a jewel polished by suspense, precious precisely because it is not yet claimed. I sometimes imagine that the world itself conspires to keep us in suspense, as if the heavens delight in our anticipation. Even so, I do not despair. Instead, I revel in the exquisite tension, in the patience that makes eventual fulfillment all the more radiant. I imagine the weight of your gaze upon me, steady and unwavering, and the way it might strip away all pretense, leaving only the truth of our hearts. That imagined moment makes me age with desire and reverence, for it promises recognition that transcends words. There is a quiet thrill in imagining your hand brushing against mine accidentally, deliberately or simply by fate. The suspense of that touch, unspoken yet electric, ignites my heart and fills my imagination with endless possibilities. Even the thought of your laughter has the power to sway me, to lift me above the careful composure demanded of my role. Your presence, real or imagined, dissolves restraint and allows a freedom that is intoxicating in its rarity. I imagine the first time we might walk together unobserved, unburdened by protocol, and the simplicity of that imagined closeness feels revolutionary. Each step beside you is a secret victory, a declaration of intimacy that the world cannot yet see. Sometimes I feel as though the suspense itself is a gift, a way of sharpening every longing until it glows with an almost tangible intensity. Loving you in anticipation is as beautiful as the love I will finally be allowed to share. I imagine whispering secrets to you, sharing pieces of my soul that no one else may ever know, and the suspense of your response fills me with a trembling excitement. The possibility of mutual revelation makes even imagined moments breathtaking. There is a sacredness in the distance between us, a tension that renders every thought of you more precious, more luminous. I carry it as carefully as a crown jewel, honoring its weight and the delight it brings to my heart. I imagine the day we might finally embrace without reservation, and the suspense of that day makes every heartbeat a note in a symphony of anticipation. Even imagining it leaves me both restless and peaceful, for I know some joys must be earned through longing. Even in moments of solitude, I feel your presence echoing in my mind, a soft gravity pulling me toward what is inevitable. The suspense of waiting for that inevitable closeness makes each imagined touch, each imagined smile, shimmer with its own life. I sometimes imagine the delicate way our first kiss might happen, not rushed, but deliberate, full of the weight of what we have held in our hearts. The anticipation of that intimacy fills me with a trembling hope, a reminder that some treasures are too precious to be hurried. Finally, I carry you in me as both a promise and a longing, a fire that burns quietly but intensely, illuminating every corner of my thoughts. The suspense of our meeting, the anticipation of our shared life, transforms every imagined moment into something eternal, something sacred, something undeniably ours.